We are basically now at this point in countdown mode to when essentially the first lot of proper checks are essentially started on goods between the UK and the rest of Europe. At the moment, checks going to Europe are there, but they are not currently. We are, like I say, we're pretty much waving everything through. However, from the 1st of October, those checks must be started to be implemented. And I have been somewhat expecting the government to roll these back, because if you want a picture of how potentially these border checks are going to work, you've only got to look at the disaster that has been the Northern Ireland Protocol and the problems that that border and those checks have almost caused for businesses. And at this moment in time, we are getting the message that Frost has basically decided to currently keep these checks kicked on down the road. Again, they can't do that indefinitely. Sooner or later, there must be checks. And we are going to experience the first lot. And if businesses are complaining about the amount of checks that are potentially going to be on the Northern Ireland border, what about when they are at the ports down south? But of course, it's not just the ports down south. We have ports here in Yorkshire, mainly Hull. Again, like I say, if your business is Hull and you export to Europe, then you can almost guarantee that your port of call will literally be Hull, potentially Newcastle, and around that area. Those are your two, so we say, closest exit points to getting to the sending your goods into the EU market. And they are not prepared. They are literally not prepared. We are going to see some absolute disasters come rolling around October. And as these more checks get underway, because it's not just the 1st of October, we are seeing the start of January, checks coming in, end of January as well. More checks are going to come in with essentially March of next year, all the checks be fully implemented. And remember, these checks have already been kicked down the road last year, and we have to suspect now maybe some of these checks might get kicked down the road as well. We'll have to wait and see. We don't know, but I'd have thought the government would have been doing that now. This literally might come at the very last minute for all we know. But like I say, that's generally how the government tends to act, very last minute. But as always, before we do jump into finding out more about this chaos at our ports up here in Yorkshire, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And also down below, there are links to my Patreon page, as well as one donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel. So let's jump into this then. This comes from the Yorkshire Bylines. The title is Ports Prepare for Full Brexit Checks. It's just over 3 weeks until D-Day, the start of document checks on EU food imports arriving here in the UK. From the 1st of October, consignments of food and products of animal origin, ranging from pet food to honey being shipped from the continent, will be required to have the necessary certification to enter the country. In January, physical inspections will then follow. But before Brexit, no import checks were necessary, of course, with the UK being part of the EU's frictionless cross-border trading model, being the single market. And as this week's indefinite extension of the grace periods for checks on the border with Northern Ireland, as the protocol has shown, life outside the model is far from easy. While most of the media remains focused on the stalemate across the Irish Sea, the same tricky issues are facing other ports around the country. Under Boris Johnson's oven-ready Brexit deal, checks are due to come into force next month, and they should have started long ago, but were delayed because it turned out the UK was nowhere near ready to actually implement them. The necessary border control post had yet to be built, and the staff required to carry out the Brexit checks was simply not in place. The 6-month delay has brought more time. But there is still widespread concern over how this regime will actually cope, not least because it relies on the new untested IT system, with the UK no longer part of the EU's established Traces online certification system. There is also massive uncertainty over the volume of UK imports that requires checks. The original government data supplied to the port health authorities and the port operators in 2020 on predicted numbers of EU import checks was used in plans to construction of the new border control posts and, of course, extra staffing required by the port health authorities. However, new HMRC data now forecasts that the expected volumes will be at least 3 times higher than the first thought. In ports like Hull, this means that the port health authorities having to face a triple at least its workforce of inspectors, vets, and administration staff in a very unprecedented recruitment drive. And we've actually talked before on this channel about the problems Hull could face if these lorries start backing up. Like, Hull city centre is just going to get absolutely gridlocked. So at the helm of the Hull and Goole Port Health Authority Chief Inspector is Lawrence Detman, the man with over 53 years experience of working in port health. As such, he's seen life before the EU, inside the EU, and now outside the EU again. He had this to say: "The transition we face is not just as an authority, but as a country. It is an enormous challenge. Here we are 5 years plus on from the referendum, and we still are not sorted. It's been an absolute political nightmare, but the very pressurized situation for all of us has been a complete double whammy with COVID and the EU transition. My team has been particularly challenged both by those things. The transition from EU membership has created a situation that some of us in our worst dreams and nightmares actually did not even forecast. A lot of the food we eat in this country comes from Europe and was never subject to any import checks because of the freedom of movement, so nobody checked anything. More than that, probably no one, including myself, knew what was coming in because there was no legal requirement to do so. We still don't know really because no one has been keeping any figures. The 6-month delay in implementing the border checks, he says, were necessary." He replied to that saying, "Nobody was ready. The funding was just not readily available from the central government, and our staffing resources were not ready, not just in Hull, but other port health authorities around the country as well." Any attempt to try and ease into the new regime, importers will not initially be penalised if their paperwork isn't completed correctly, while only a limited number of checks will actually be made. In addition, charges by the port health authorities for their work are being suspended for at least 3 months. The remote pre-clearance electronic checks on goods before the ships arrives in the UK are being planned in an attempt to try and avoid potential bottlenecks building up at ports. However, that relies on the UK's new import of products and animals and food and free systems, the IPFSS, actually working properly. Because freight arrives in Hull on overnight crossings from Europe, the pressure will be to carry out on physical checks shortly after their arrival in the morning. Being able to do that document checks on the day of the night of the arrival before is the only way to prevent congestion at the ports, let alone on the local roads. We are still having urgent discussions with the government about that, Mr. Dent said. If we can achieve that, I think we will probably not face a level of congestion on the roads, but it might just be extra storage capacity that's needed at the ports. He even remains very cautious about the new IT system while doing this, doing what it says on the tin. "We're told it's ready. We're told it works, but it hasn't really been tried or even tested yet. Am I confident about it? I have an inbuilt suspicion that government IT mega systems tend not to work as designed. Maybe that's me being over pessimistic. I have to believe it will work as we switch it on and it does what it says. If it doesn't, I'm not sure what contingency there is after that, with all the other things we have to do manually, and that will take a long time." So, chaos in Hull potentially there, and this isn't the first time we've talked about that. And remember, to get to the port of Hull, the lorries have to go through the city centre. So there will be a significant build-up, congestion-wise, in the city of Hull if that happens, and that will have a massive knock-on effect to the economy of Hull. But then again, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, as well as a donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.